Hi, this is Michael from Expanse VR, and in this tutorial we're going to be talking about the state pattern, also known as a state machine. Now, the state pattern is a super important concept to get your head around and something that's quite often missed in very beginner tutorials, but I find is an extremely important concept that should be learnt and understood as soon as possible, because it is going to fundamentally change how you go about designing your programs. And if you're doing games, this is extremely important because we use states all the time. As an example, if you've done any animations in Unity, you would have seen the animator, which is actually just a state machine itself. And you can see the different states here. We've got the idle state, walk state, run state, attack state. And this just handles the animations during those states, but that is an example of a state machine. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course click that notification button down below to make sure you are notified whenever I post a new tutorial for you. But there are many other states that you can have in a program. Your menus can be in states, your game itself can be in a state. There's the running state, the pause state, menu state. Anywhere where there's a decision that can be made, we can actually refactor this from what is quite often used as if statements or switch statements into a state pattern. Now, to help you get your head around the state pattern, I'm actually going to do two examples in this tutorial. The first one is just going to be a very simple abstract version of it, just keeping things simple. We're going to use this scene here, and let me get rid of this first. Just going to use this scene here, nothing fancy going on. And once we've done one example of this, we're nice and simple, we're then going to jump into this scene here, which is a form of an RTS. And I'm going to show you how it can be used in the building cycle of an RTS. So jumping into our simple scene here, we've just got ourselves a plane for the ground, and we've got ourselves a cube, which is going to represent the state of this cube. Okay, so first thing we do is jump into our scripts. We're just going to create a new script, and we're going to show you a simple version of a state. Not the way that we want to do it, but a way that you could do it, just so you can start to see the problems that we could have if we don't use a state machine. So here we're going to call this cube behavior. And we're going to assign it to our cube there, and we'll open it up in Visual Studio. So first of all, we're just going to get rid of all these. We don't need it. And we're going to use the on mouse over method. And all we're going to do on here is look for a left mouse click. And when we do get this mouse button click, what are we going to be trying to do is change the color of our block based on the state it's in. Now, what we need to do here, first of all, is set up an enum for our states. And if you've don't know what enums are, I have covered this in another tutorial, which I've provided in a link above and also in the description below. So this first enum is just going to be states. And we're going to have first state, second state, third state. Nothing too complicated here. So of course we need to have a couple of variables. First one is our current state. And on start, we will initialize this. Current state equals states.first. So the first thing that we need to do actually when we do this is we need to check what state we are in, change the color of the block based on the state it's in. Actually, no, what we're going to do is check what state we're on, switch to the next state, and change the color of the block based on its new state. Now, the other thing we need is we need some colors to choose from. So we're going to have some exposed colors that we can choose from for the states. So we've got private, color, first color. I'll just speed things up here. Second color and third color. And so we don't forget, let's just assign this to our state. So we're going to have green, yellow, red. Nice and easy. We'll also need a reference to our renderer so that we can change the color. And we need to assign it. And from there, we need a function, assign color from state. So here we're going to use a switch statement. And we do that based on the current state. So we have states.first, which will be then renderer.material.color equals first color. And we'll just do this 2 more times. And we can quickly test that this assigned color is working, because now that we've gotten a state assigned, this should work straight off the bat. And there we go, we've seen it change color. And in fact, we don't need this part here. We don't need to know what state we're in. We just need to change it to the next state based on a mouse button click and change the color based on that. So we already know that we've got this up and running, this second part, because we're going to change that. That works. And just so we can test, next state. Console. So that's working. Back in Visual Studio, now our next step is to change this state. And the great thing about enums is that they do have a integer value assigned to them. So if we look at our first, second, and third, by default, these are going to have a value of 0, 1, and 2. So what we can do to our current state is just add 1 and check to see if it goes above the max value. So instead of doing this, we're going to go current state plus equal, actually no, we can just do plus plus. Then just check to see if it's gone past the max value. So if current state equals 2 or greater than equal to dot. Actually, I just remembered to get the actual count is actually quite complicated, but we're not going to do that for that today. So just see if it's greater than or equal to 2. Actually, sorry, we need to cast this to an int. Then current state will be equal to states.first. Okay, let's test this out. Actually, we don't need that anymore. We are only going through 2 of our states. Actually, sorry, maybe this needs to be 3. There we go. So with this here, we've avoided an if statement checking each time to see what it is. We do have a switch statement to check the colors. And the only thing we need to do here is check to make sure that we haven't got to the last of the state, so that we go all the way back to the first state. And in essence, this is actually a simple state machine. It does serve the function. The only issue we have with this is if we decide that we want to have 20 different states means we have to have a very long switch statement, which we always want to avoid. In fact, you should very rarely use switch statements. And also, if we wanted to have other functionality during each state, we're going to be very limited by this state machine here. But it does give you a simple idea of how it works. So what we're going to do now is change this to a state machine. And what we can do here, first of all, is change this to state machine. And by the way, if you ever do want to change the name of a class, this is the best way to do it, is here, not in your project manager, because if you change it here, it won't change it in script or on your actual attached inspectors. So we're changing this to a state machine. And again, if you need to know how that's done, that's just right click and rename, or Control R for the shortcut. We're going to keep our colors for the moment because we will use them. We will use the current state, but we're going to use that in a different way, and we will keep the renderer. So some of these things will stay. What we are going to do for the moment is we're going to get rid of this. We are going to get rid of this. Also going to get rid of this. We'll keep the rest for the moment. And what we're also going to do is we're going to create a new script called state. And open that one up there. Now our state isn't going to be a mono behavior, so we can get rid of this. We get rid of all of this. And this is actually going to be an abstract class. So I'm not going to get into what abstraction is today. It will be for another tutorial. Just follow along for the moment. You'll understand what we're using this for this particular usage. And that's all you need to know at this point in time. You don't need to know the nuts and bolts of it, but do understand that abstraction is a very important part of object-oriented programming, and it's something that you do want to understand and get your head around as well. And feel free to look it up and do your own research on it. But just know that for what we're using it for today, you'll get it. It will be easy to understand, and you will be able to use it for the purpose of building state machines. So the first thing we're going to be doing in this one is storing our color. And we're going to set this up as, no, we're not going to do that for you guys. That's going to just make things too complicated. You guys don't need to know that at this stage. What we are going to be doing though is another new concept for a lot of people, is we're going to generate a constructor. And if you didn't see what I just did there, I've right clicked on our variable, quick actions and refactoring, and click the top one here, generate constructor. So what this is going to do for us is every time we create a new state, it's going to force us to enter a color, and it's going to store it for us. Again, you'll see how this works very, very shortly. Just understand that's what we are doing. And the other thing that we do want to do is we want a reference to our state machine. We should actually have that first. In fact, actually no, we'll do it this way just so you guys can also see how you can add this in. So this one, we don't need it to be public. Actually, I don't think either of them needs to be public, but let's go with this for the moment. Private state machine. State machine. And if we right click on that one again, same thing. No, that's not the right one. There we go. So it was add. So now we're going to have reference to the state machine. Again, this is going to make sense very, very shortly, what we're doing here. Just follow along for the moment and all suddenly click into place. And just on a side note, I recommend going through after this tutorial and creating your own state machines for lots of different varied things. Have a play around with it in Unity. Set up something like this where you just got a block that you change colors, or maybe a UI where it changes the name, anything just to have a practice with it. And if you are having any troubles with it, definitely jump into the Discord channel and just have an ask. For this, we're just going to have two simple methods that we're going to derive from. The first one is public void execute. And sorry, this should be public virtual. And we're just going to have an empty body like this. And again, we're going to have a second one, public virtual void change state. Again, nothing too complicated here. And to be honest, we could actually do all the functionality that we want to do with this here. But I'm just going to show you how it works in the other one, just because we're going to add a few bit different things just so you can see why we're doing it. So jumping back into here, we now need to create our states. So again, these are actually going to be stored as classes as well. So we've got our first state. And initially, this seems like we're doing a lot of extra work. But later on, you will see where the benefit of this little bit of extra work comes in. And just to keep things nice and tidy, we're going to create a folder called states. Now, some people do this differently. They will put the states created and the base state in there. I prefer to put the base state out here so I know how to find it easy enough. So I have my state machine and my base state and all the derived states in here. So let's open the first one and show what we're going to do here. So again, we can get rid of all this. We're going to get rid of this, and we're actually going to type in state here. So it's now deriving from, oops, it just disappeared on us, our state class. So just like how our state machine derives from mono behavior, this first state is going to derive from our state class. So it's going to have all this already implemented in it. And now you're starting to see a little bit of how polymorphism happens in programming. Again, topic for another tutorial, but you'll get the concept here as we do this a few times over. Now it's going to have a little squiggly red line telling us there's an error because with abstract classes, we need to do a few things. And if we right click, it's going to tell us what needs to do is that we need to build a constructor for this one. Again, it's sounding a little bit complicated, but just understand anytime you see the word base, it means it's going to our base class here. So what it's saying is that in our base class, our state one here, we have this constructor looking for a color and a state machine, and it's asking for that. And so what happens is we've got a new constructor here. So if we were to take this away for a second, it looks the same. We've got our first state, and it's asking for a state color and a state machine. And what this is doing is passing it in to our base class. So what happens is that, for instance, with the color here, when we create this first state, and again, just follow along, you'll see what we're doing in just a moment. It will take that color and it's going to pass it into here, which is going to then be stored in our state color variable. And just so you can see, if we were to create a method here, public void sum method, we can add, actually that should be protected. Difference between protected and private is they are the same in the fact that only the class can access it, but protected means our derived class can also access it. So now we can access that state machine from state. I just realized I've got a spelling mistake there. Where'd they go? That should be state color. So same thing, we can also access the state color. So now we've got our first color. And what's the two things that we want to do with this? One, we want to change our color. So override, if we type the override one, which allows us to override our bottom states because they are virtual. We can override execute. Now we don't need the base.execute. Remember what I was saying about base? Base just means it's referencing our derived class. We don't need, because this is empty, we don't need to do anything. But what do we want to do? We want to change the color. So what we need to do is go into our state machine, and we need a public method saying change color, and we need a color passed in. That's some terrible naming there, but we'll leave it for the moment. And what we can do is our renderer, just like before, dot material dot color will equal color to change. Actually, I hate that. That's absolutely terrible. Just do color. Oh, actually, what it is we're passing in the state color, aren't we? State color. That works as well. So that's nice and simple. So what are we doing here in our base one? We're going to do. Actually, I'm going to keep that base execute for a second because we're going to show you a bit more how the base works. I think it should be covered in a different one, but let's do it here as well. For the moment, we're going to do state machine because we have a reference to it now. Dot change color. So we're calling that method from our state machine. And we're going to pass in our own. So terrible. We're going to pass in that color that we've stored. And I'm going to show you a really cool, fancy little trick you can do here. So normally you'll go up here and delete these, but there's a little broom looking icon down here, which is a sweep, a cleanup button. If you clean up, you'll use any of the it'll clean up any of the using statements that you're not using. Okay, so now we've got that running there. So when we call execute on this particular state, it will change the color to the current color. And we'll go a little bit further. We'll go debug.log first state. So we'll have two references there. And we're going to see why I put this in here just in a moment. Now we need to do the same thing for each one of the actual other states as well. But before we go a little bit further, we also need to do our override change state. This one we won't need, the base one definitely. So we also need something to change the state of our states back in our state machine. So we still need another one here. So we need yet another method. Now I'm going to introduce you guys to a cool little trick you can do, stop us bouncing forward. So we want to state. So this won't be set. This will be set state. So in the state machine, we're going to set the state. And what will we be passing in? We'll be passing in the state that we want to go to. So we have our... we haven't done that yet. All right, leave that here for a second. So one of the other things that we're going to need to do in our state machine is we are going to need references to the states that we want. So we've got first state, now did I name that wrong? Yes, I did. So we're going to need to get to this anyway. So again, rename. Okay. So sorry, we need to have references, and I should have done this before. Working a bit backwards on some of these things. We need a reference to each one of these states. Because what I'm going to do is then pass in the state I want to go to. So in this case, we're in the first state, we want to go to the second state. Now, the reason I've left it like this is because it's giving us error saying this method does not exist. But again, if we right click, we can actually generate that method for ourselves. Done. Now, if we go into the state machine, we don't want it to be internal. We want it to be public, but everything else is the same. And what we can do here now is do our current state equals I'm going to change this to a new state. Now we're having a few conniptions here. First of all, because the current state is an enum, which we don't need. We actually don't need these enums as well. This can go away. Now, this is saying that we're going to pass in the second state. But because we've now got an abstract class of state, which both the first class has been derived from, and our third class will be derived from. Let's fix that one again. And if we open up our second state, we'll do the same. We can actually change this to something else. We can actually change this now to just a state. And we'll change this to state. So this is all it's looking for. And here we're going to change this to, what happened to here? Public first state. Don't know what just happened there. But anyway. Oh, it's up there. That's what happened. Ah. I see. This should be down here. Sorry, I'm just cleaning this up one, get rid of that error because this can now be first state. All right, now we're getting somewhere and it's looking a lot cleaner. So back to what I was saying. Now, says it's looking for a state, but technically first class, second state, sorry, third state are all derived from state. So they are both a third state and also a state class. So this now allows us to pass in any one of these into this method here. It'll accept it. This is where the state machine is super powerful. So we've now got rid of all these if statements and we still haven't finished yet. So one of the things we're going to do now is our current state has been set and we're going to call the execute function on the current state. Now at the moment we have set the first state, yes. Actually, what we can do here is we're not going to say current state equals first state. We're actually going to call the set state function. Yes, much cleaner, much nicer. Oh, love it when it comes together like this. Okay, so set state. It's going to call the first state, so our current state is going to be set, just like we wanted to then. But then it's also going to call the execute function on us. And in our first state, what does the execute do? It says state machine, change color, the state color that we've saved. And change color is going to set the material color. But there is something we're missing here. And if we play, this is not going to change color. Because this, when we call execute, there's a null reference exception. Why? Because we have declared it but we haven't instantiated it. So at the moment, these are null. There's nothing to them. So one of the things we need to do as well, before we get to any further, and we'll do this first with the first state, is first state equals new first state. And as you can see, now that constructor that we've set up has come in. It's asking for the color that we want and the state machine. So the color is obviously going to be first color, and the state machine is this. So now if we run it again, boom, it's working. Our first state has been initiated. But remember, we need to do this for all our other states as well. So second state, second color, and same thing for our third state. Great. Now, unfortunately, we're still missing a few steps here. So the first part is, if we look at our first state, we've got this in here, but we don't have that in our second state. At the moment, our second state is doing nothing. So let's copy that in. I'm going to copy and paste to make it nice and easy. Now, the difference is we're going to be doing different things here. So this is going to say second state. And this is going to say we want to switch to the third state. Done. And our third state is going to do the same thing. Except for this is going to want to say third state. And we're going to change back to our first state here. Cool. Now if we push play, clicking on it, nothing's happening. Why? Because we actually haven't changed the state yet. So we do have this function called getMouseButton. Now, the great thing about this is with all this set up, we don't have to do any if statements. We don't have to do any checking. All we need to do is go to our current state and call change state. That is it. It's all set up and running. And once again, we don't need any of this stuff up here, so we're just going to clean that up. Now it should all work. Click, click, and you can see up here in our console that we are seeing the states change. Nice. And as you can see, nothing here. There's no if statements, there's no checking. Let's just clean that up. And what we'll do to make this a little bit easier, we're going to extract this as well. I'm going to call this initiate states. So our start method is nice and neat and clean. We'll pull this out. I know this is a little bit silly, but for me, everything should be in order, and it's public methods first, then private methods. There we go. So now we have a nice, clean, neat state machine. And as you can see that it's done here is that the states are now handling all the parts for us. There's nothing that we need to do. So a couple of things here to show how we can extend this out and why state machines are so powerful. First of all, as you can see here, each one of these state machines is doing the same thing. It's doing a state machine change color, state color. So we actually don't need to have this in each one of our execute functions. We can actually go back to our base state and do it here. And it's still going to work. The difference between each one of these states now is that they're calling a different debug.log. So you can see where they've got their commonality from using the base, but the difference from having this one here. And of course, this can be extended out a lot more. But the other thing that's super powerful about it, now say we want a fourth class. A fourth state. So we create a new one. Fourth state. Same again. State. Clean this out. Excellent. See, where's our third state? This is where it's going to change. Okay, so you're going to bounce back to our first state. State machine, we're going to now need our fourth color. We'll need to create our fourth state, and we need to instantiate it. Change this to purple. And our third state is now going to go to our fourth state. And it should be just as simple as that. Assuming I haven't missed anything. There we go. And then back to first state. So first, second, third, fourth state. Nice and easy. And on top of that, what we're going to do now is on the fourth state machine, we're going to have a public void destroy this. Oh God, it's been a while since I've done this. Destroy this. So on our fourth one, we're going to do something different. We're going to call the destroy this function. Dump, dump. What am I missing? Was it this dot game object? Oh, this dot game object, sorry. Dunk, 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 purple, one more, destroyed. So there you go, it's got another set of functionality now. Again, I haven't had to do much except for adding a new method. Still no if statements or switch statements. It's all being handled by the states. And this is how powerful the state machines are and why they are used. You've also got a little bit of dipping the toe into abstract classes now, polymorphism. What else did we cover in this one? Using base classes, and we also covered constructors, so you can see how you can instantiate classes, in this case the states, with some variables already in place, which means they don't need to reference things directly. So that's it for this half of the tutorial on state machines. The next episode, we're going to jump into our RTS, and you're going to see how it is used in a practical manner. Although I think you're probably already starting to get an idea of how it runs. But to give you an idea, what we're going to be aiming for is here. We're going to have it so that we've got our little barracks here. When we click on it, it starts building. And when it's finished, we have our soldier pop out. Here's this cool little guy here. So you can see it again, click again, it's building, it's ready, and another one pops out. And this is all being handled by a state machine. But again, if you have any questions at all about this, or if you do want to attempt doing your own state machines but are having trouble with it, jump over to the Discord. I'm actually thinking shortly that we will do a challenge on this. But yeah, definitely jump in or hit me up with any questions below in the chat. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and share to help grow our beautiful Unity community. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button below to make sure you get to see our next video. See you shortly.